Welcome, welcome. Hi, everybody.
It's a Gabby and Alessia day.
Yay, it's been a little bit. We've had so many lovely, lovely guests for quite a few weeks now. So it's just, you get just us guys. Okay, so we are up to episode 79. So this is pretty cool. We're making our way up there. And today we are going to chat about some conversation that we've had with other professionals, especially in healthcare and service professions, mostly around like professional boundaries and how to navigate situations where you feel overworked, burnt out, maybe needing a break, needing to communicate better what your own needs are. Um, yeah, I mean, I think we can pretty much all sympathize. Like, this is a big
Right.
deal, right?
Right.
So, where do you think that this whole culture of allowing yourself to get burnt out and not set professional boundaries really stems from? Like, why is this a thing?
I think there's multiple reasons, but I would say, I think the hardest thing when we talk about our relationship with work, especially if you're an employee, let's say, right,
Yeah.
is finances are survival, right? So there's this heavy weight of I have to do this because I can't lose my job. I have a family. I need money. I want to also be able to do the things I want to do, but at what cost? As much as I think there's a lot of different factors that we've already discussed in episodes, like there is people pleasing, like checking in to make sure, is it me? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I
Yeah.
people pleasing? Am I not using my voice? Am I not sticking up for myself?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I think you could practice all those things and still be like, wow, I have had the hard conversation with my boss. I have done X. I have asked for a pay raise. I've asked for less hours. I've asked, all this stuff. You did your part and it's still like you're working for somebody who's like, well, if you want this X amount of money, you want this job, this is what you got to do. And
Yeah.
that scarcity of oh, I don't have other options, or what if I lose my job and then my family and how things are impacted. I think it's like the financial pool is especially in our world now where everything's expensive and our economy is hard, where people are so scared to switch or have a job loss, where it's like I'll put up with anything because I'm so scared around
Yeah.
finances. But what do you think when I say that?
I mean, I definitely agree. I think like anything else, and we've talked about this so much, the external pressures of what professional life should look like, right? You should always be slammed, you should always be busy, you should always be overbooked. And if you're not, you're failing. And I think that there's some truth to that in our society, right? Like if you see someone, at least even professionally, right, that I've had therapists that I meet and they're like, yeah, I have one client this week. I feel weird being like, oh, it's actually like a pretty busy week for me, you know?
Yeah.
So even just that natural communication of, well, we're all sort of in this together, right? We have ebbs and flows, and every business is different and every city is different, and what you may go through just in acquiring business potential and what's the next thing that you need to do, right? Like there is that mindset of I can always do better, but then I do feel like there's a lot of pressure on service providers to be doing the next thing. Like, how else am I going to make money? How else am I going to promote my business? And it's exhausting. It's a
Right.
lot. And that's not even with looking at your actual schedule and seeing how many people am I working with this week? How many patients do I have? How many clients do I have? How many meetings do I have? Right. So there's a lot of points of origin. But I mean, even from the perspective of mental health, and I think this is true for healthcare, when you are providing a service to someone or you are their caretaker in some part of your role, it feels almost weird to cancel or to take
Mhm.
time off, which I feel like is of right. You should be able to take time off. I mean, obviously with not canceling last minute on people, but when I have vacation or time off coming up, I feel weird being like, I'm out that week, actually. You
Right. And
know,
why? Because what do you
why?
think goes through your mind?
Yeah, and I know that I shouldn't feel that way, but I do because I feel like sometimes I owe someone that consistency. They come to me for need you every week. I need to talk to you. I have things to do. And obviously I'm like, okay, well, you can make it another week. Like we can accommodate it. You've
Yes.
canceled before. But I think the mindset is I get paid to give you this at a certain frequency, right? I
Yes.
get paid to meet with you and be there for you, and that's my job. So it
Yeah.
comes a point where I have even tossed around like, okay, I have time off, but should I meet one day anyway? Should I make that work? And I
Yeah.
think that that's it happens, right? I've heard this from so many providers, not just therapists. Like, I don't want to take a day off, even though I deserve it. Like, I'm on vacation, I'm working.
Right. Right, so I think that's, like, a thing that, I talked about finances, you're talking about it sounds like the worry and concern we have for other people plays a
Yeah.
factor, I guess we're kind of talking more about, like, healthcare and, like you said, like, service providers, more of, like, when you're, like, caring for people, it is harder to be like, and I think we have a lot of, like, your brain is set up like, "Oh, what if these people need me?"
Yeah.
Right? But it's like
Hmm.
the opposite of what we teach, right? Like, if we need time off, it's like, how do you think about yourself too, which I think we all have issues with.
Yeah.
And if I circle back around to, like, what I had mentioned about finances, I think what's hard when people are like, "But I don't know what to do because I realistically have to go." I'm thinking about some of my clients who are in healthcare, and it's like, "These are my hours. I can't lower my hours because I need the finances."
Hmm.
I've already communicated my boss that, like, "Hey, I don't think this is appropriate or I don't like this." And they're like, "Well,
Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
I've done my part and, like, I'm helpless. Now what do I do? I'm
Yeah.
not willing to leave my job. I need the money. I've already communicated. So how do I work on my mental health?" Right? And so, like, I'm always thinking, like, I always teach it in the form of, like, relationships. Like, if somebody walks in our office, we've both seen it. It's
Yeah.
the reality of therapy. When somebody comes in and is like, "I know I want a divorce.
Hmm.
I know I am not in love. I don't wanna be in this relationship, but I'm not ready to leave it."
Yeah.
You're not like, "No, just leave," right? You're not like, "We
No.
have to get," you're like, "All right,
Yeah.
what can we look at to help you be in this relationship now?
Yeah.
What are you gonna work on that might help you feel a little lighter day to day?" Like,
Right.
I think what we're talking about in sense of relationships is always, what can I do differently in the same environment when I can't actually leave the environment? And I
Right.
think that's where people get confused, like, "Well, this is just what it is. I'm stuck." And then you're not looking for, like, the micro things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that that's something I talk a lot about since I work in the relationship space very much. Like, you do have a role in your own distress. I've said it before on episodes. What that means is not you are a participant in how much your life sucks right now, as much as it is what am I doing that is perpetuating some of the things that are hard? Am I creating circumstances that are stressful? Am I taking on extra things at work, for example, to loop it back to the work, right? Am I overseeing people that are not under me? Am I creating more, tasks that don't need to be done right now? Am
Right,
I coming into work earlier than I need to for some reason, right? Like, those are all things that with some simple shifts, you can make your plate a little lighter, you
right,
know? And so what that can look like is, can I automate something? Can I streamline things? Is my way of organizing my time not effective right now? Do I have other demands on my time at home that are being overtaken by work when they shouldn't be? Right. So, like you're saying, zoom out and look at what's changeable. There's
right.
this whole like trend on the internet about adding whimsy to your life. That's sort of what we're talking about, right? How can
Right,
we make this situation that you can't get out of more palatable?
right. And I think it's interesting when I hear you talk because I do think when we talk about work,
Hmm.
at least for some people that cross my mind, it's like, if you're a person that's programmed, show up at work, do the best you can, give
Yep.
quality care, or give your all,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I do think, unfortunately, like, I'm not saying that's a bad mindset by any means, because I think there's certain situations where, like, that's an amazing quality to have as a person to be like, I am a person who shows up and gets stuff done, and I'm an overachiever when I want to be and all this stuff. But where I think we see that burnout
Hmm.
is like when you're in like a broken system, or I'm thinking about healthcare right now. When you're in a system that you're like, this is just not healthy and it's not realistic for me to come in and overachieve every day and beat myself up because I feel like I need to be doing more when the reality is I really can't.
Yeah.
And like not accepting that, like, actually, this kind of sucks. And how do I just show up and do the best I can with what I'm given and not
Right.
overdo it? And I think a
Yeah.
lot of times when you have people who want the situation to be different. They think like overperforming or trying to change things that they can't change and get stuck in that.
Yeah.
They're just like not accepting the reality of like, how about I just say like, this job sucks. It's not the
Yeah.
I can't give quality care. I can't do X. My boss said this isn't going to change, but why am I going to come in here and give them this version of me that is overdoing things because I think if I do more, that things will be
Mhm.
easier when that's a lot of times not realistic when you have certain dynamics of work that aren't going to be working in your favor.
Yeah. I'm like kind of chuckling because I'm thinking of an exact situation where what you're saying happened to me back in my days working in hospital systems in New York City. And I had a job going through paperwork for like a spinal implant, and we were doing research on some of the outcomes. And everything was in a filing cabinet. And I was like the research novice there. So they were like, okay, you do that cabinet, right? It was a mess. They were just throwing every single document that they got from a participant in there. It was like every single form. They weren't organized. And I sat one day and made folders of everything. It was like cervical spine, lumbar spine, whatever. And then all of the different levels and the different implants and the sites and everything. And I came back the next week and it was literally all the way that I had found it. There were just
Ugh,
chucking stuff in there and my soul died. I spent
absolutely.
hours just going through paperwork. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not really getting paid. This is like volunteer basis. It was just internship, right? And I
Yeah.
was so mad. But they were so busy and really didn't care. It wasn't necessary for the system. They didn't see what I was doing anyway. So it didn't matter how caught up and organized things were. And I think that was my moment when I got back in there and I was like, this is going to be so great. I know where everything is, that it sort of shot me down a little bit. Like, that's not my job. My job is to just do the job,
Yeah.
going above and beyond. Like, clearly nobody else cared, nobody recognized, and it wasn't pivotal for their study to happen, for this extra work to be done. So I think our point here is not to say like don't do the extra mile, but like
Yeah.
recognize that like I wasn't going to go in a second time and do it again,
Right.
right?
Where some people would. They're like, well, let me keep doing this and then getting frustrated and pissed off and being like,
Yeah,
you're the one impacted
right.
and nobody else cares.
No. So I think that's the point right there. If you are the only person who's either improved or frustrated by something that you're doing, you have to decide for yourself if it's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously know everything we talk about in here is like easier said than done, but
Yeah.
I think it's really hard to distinguish. I mean, that is a therapeutic thing. Like, how do we look at what you said, our own suffering, right? How are
Mhm.
we aware enough to be like, what am I doing that's just impacting me negatively day to day? Because it's
Yeah.
just, when you were talking, it made me think about one of my clients years ago. She would talk about like the high performer. She's a
Yeah.
person, she's like, I get stuff done. I know I'm this. I'm confident that I'll get it, whatever. The
Mhm.
job she had, she was like the go to where people would just put stuff on her desk. Like, oh,
Yeah.
she's good at it. Here. Oh, I
Yeah.
can't. And she would come in and be like, "But I know, but like I don't want my boss to be upset with me, and like I'm the one that's really fast at this, and I'm good at it, and I'm always she like very people pleasing, right?
Yeah.
Of like." And I looked at her one day and was like, "Why do you allow people to put stuff on your desk?" And she's like, "Well, because who else is going to do it if I don't?" And I'm like, the the person that was supposed to do it."
Right.
Or have you talked to your boss? Like,
Mhm.
hey, just so you know, this is what's happening. I'm kind of
Yeah.
overworked. Is there
Right.
any other option? Right? Can we have a conversation? And she's like, you could hear her anxiety, like, I don't want people to think I can't do what I'm there to do. It's like this pressure on herself of,
Yeah.
I don't want my boss to think I can't handle it. And I'm like,
Right.
a lot of times I get sad because then I have the opposite where I see bosses and they're like, yeah, my employee told me X. And we just, like in that example, like you just put it on her desk because she's always like, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got
Right.
it. So
Yeah.
I'm not thinking like it's too overwhelming for you. I'm thinking she's so good at it. She's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Focus.
she's
Right.
fine, but she's not telling me she's not fine. So as a boss, I'm like in charge of all these people
Yep.
and she's not over here like, SOS bot. I
Yeah.
know I'm good at this, but sometimes it's too much and I'm getting a little burnout. So can we have
Right.
somebody else take on stuff? And a lot of times if you have like a healthier boss, you're absolutely like, thanks for letting me know. But a
Yeah.
lot of times an internal dialogue of, I don't want somebody, and that's from your own stuff, right? I don't want somebody to think less of me. I don't want people to think I'm incompetent. So I'm just going to take all this on so the outside world sees me in a way that I want to see. But internally, I'm like, I hate my job. I hate being here every day. I'm burnt out. I go home. I take my work with me. I wake up. I have to come back and do it again. I'm pissed off at all my colleagues. I'm pissed off. And you're the one that's angry and resentful because you're not setting a boundary. And I think looking at that before we're like, hey, it's the job that I hate,
Yeah.
not saying that that might not be part of it. but what can you control inside the dynamic that you don't like?
Right. And I think it's hard too because when we have a perspective of people pleasing or overperforming or meeting our own standards, right? Then it creates this impossible situation where you cannot do every single task in front of you 100%. Something
Mhm.
is going to suffer. And inevitably, that reinforces the fact that, well, I have to work harder, right? Because I wasn't able to do all of these things. I missed a deadline, I missed something. And that's, sort of would have been fixed if you were able to say, no, not that, right? I don't have space for that. I don't have bandwidth. I don't have time. So you're going to have to just handle that, right? It's hard to do. It's hard to implement that boundary, but that can be a helpful reframe. Like, if I take this on, am I going to be able to finish everything else on time to my own standard? If the answer is no, then something has to shift around. Yeah.
Yeah. And and,
I mean, it sucks to think about that.
it does, it does. I think it's hard because work is a sensitive subject, people, because I do think, like, we need work to survive, right? We
Yeah.
literally need finances to, like, provide. So, when I gave the example of relationships, and I do why I'm gonna say this is 'cause I have empathy for so many people, because, especially in our economy, people are like struggling to be like, what jobs are out there? How do
Yeah.
I find a job? But I also think people have to be open minded to it. I'm not going to say it's easy by any means, right? But it's like, how do I crack the door to like other possibilities? And why I say like relationships, it's like, we've all been there, right? In
Mm-hmm.
a relationship, let's just say an intimate relationship, what's this thing we hear the most when somebody's like wanting to do a breakup and scared? What if I don't find somebody else?
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to stay in this relationship because you're so scared that
Yeah.
what if I don't find something else? And then the minute you're like, let me peep that door open. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how are there other people that I like? Are there other people that would treat me better?
Right.
Am I just settling in this? And like people start opening their eyes and are like, wait, this relationship is actually pretty terrible,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the same at work when people are like, yeah, but I'm not going to find a better job. If you've
Right.
communicated everything, and I'm not saying every job's going to be perfect by any means, but it's like, I think there has to be a point because there are a lot of toxic work environments of like,
Absolutely.
can I be open minded to maybe this is toxic if I've tried setting my own boundaries, done all this? Am I willing to leave it? Or am I going to say,
Mm-hmm.
well, this is just how it is and this is just
Right.
work? Because I don't believe that. I don't believe every boss is horrible. Are there a lot of shitty ones? Yes.
Yeah.
Are there ones that don't care about their employees? Yes. Are there ones that do? Yes. But it's like
Yeah.
you might have to be brave enough to open some doors to be like, let me just
Sure.
look and see if there's another relationship that might be healthier for me. And there's going to be issues in that relationship, but maybe it's worth the job.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, because we're in a culture, especially old school cultures, like you find a job and you stay in it.
Yeah.
And now it's like at least people are trying to like look at like how do I have a healthy relationship with my career
Right.
instead of burning myself to the ground in corporate America and I'm miserable, but that's just what you do to move to the top.
Right.
And I think people have to check in with like, why am I doing that?
Right. Yeah, and this comes also to the conversation about value systems, and if money and finances are not a central part of your value system, that money will be so fulfilling to you and financial security is so fulfilling to you that you can power through the burnout, the overwork, the hard hours, the difficult schedule, blah blah blah. Then that's a very hard place to get out of. There are people that are like, if I got my money, I'm good. I will make it work, you know? But for other people, it's important to look inside yourself and say, like, I've done what I can to make the situation better. And it's still not quite there. I'm miserable. I'm struggling. I'm depressed. I'm isolating myself. I'm exhausted. I'm not happy. Well, then maybe the money that you're making is not a big enough but the money, right? To keep you there. And I think that a lot of people are ashamed to say, like, I just gave up a really good paying job, but I was miserable. I had to look at something else because I was so miserable. It wasn't worth it for me. And
Right.
that's an important thing to reconcile because I have worked with clients recently that they're like, yeah, I looked at another job, but it's a pay cut. And like, I have a really good job and it
Yeah.
pays well. Right. And sometimes it's important to look at like, what's the pros and cons for me? What am I aligning with here? The money's not enough or
Right.
the pension's not enough or whatever it is. Right. That's
Right.
okay to, like you said, crack the door. Maybe the
Right.
next option is not going to be better or it's not going to be linear, like a a lateral move. But if you're a little happier or it's a little closer to your home or you're not sitting in traffic or the hours are better, maybe that's a trade off that's worth it.
Yeah. I think I said this in one of our other podcast episodes. This stuff always makes me think of it. I saw something years ago and it was like, it's sad that when we're growing up, the language around is like, what do you want to do when you get older? We're
Hmm.
all like this, that, that. And some guy was like, the question to ask kids is like, okay, well, what kind of life do you want to live?
Yeah.
Because, our generation at least was like, go to school to be a doctor, a lawyer. Like you're thinking about professional jobs that are well paying.
Hmm.
But you know how many people have came into my office that are like, I'm a surgeon and I'm miserable, right? I did it.
Hmm.
I did it. I became a surgeon.
Yep.
But like I don't get to spend time with my family.
Yep.
I'm always on call.
Hmm.
I'm getting paid a good amount, but like I never go anywhere. So now I have this money. So what my wife and my kids go on vacation without me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I like that question because I do think all of us humans are so different and like, what kind of life do we want to live? Like, am I okay working a 9 to 5 if it's
Yeah.
a job I love? Or
Right.
am I like, hey, I want to work 3 days and make X amount of money and then this is what I want it to look like. But why I like that is because he put it into like realistic, like if you say I want to be X it's not in line with the life you want to live, you have to kind of
Yeah.
shift.
Hmm.
Okay, then maybe that's not the job I actually really want. It just sounds good in theory, you
Right.
know? And I
Right.
think it's a lot of with the virtual people working virtually. I think that's opening up people's minds like a
Hmm.
lot more to be like, wait, I do want flexibility because I do want to be able to go somewhere really quick and still be able to
Yeah.
work if I want, you know? But I definitely think that's a good question to ask people because a lot of people are not living the life they want to live. They're like, I'm working the career that I wanted.
Right.
So,
I mean, I would say this is something I have two clients now that I've sort of referred them to vocational counseling because they're young enough and they're like, I don't know what I want to do. Like, nothing's quite fitting the bill. I've tried lots of things. And, don't overlook resources that are available to you like that. Meeting with someone who's like, let's look at the things you like. Let's look at the kind of lifestyle you want. Let's look at the free time that you want. Let's look at if you want something remote, if you want to stay home, if you want to do outdoor work or indoor work or office work, right? And very often you'll find like, oh, a job I thought I wanted actually doesn't check a lot of boxes for me,
right,
you know? So being really honest, especially for younger listeners who may be like, I still don't know what I want to do with my life, right? That's an option. Go talk to someone who can guide you. And, I mean, every single day I see someone doing a job and I'm like, didn't know that was an option,
right,
right?
absolutely.
You know,
Hmm.
which is cool. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think this conversation is really important because it is really stigmatized to be like, I'm burnt out.
right,
I don't know, like, I don't find joy in my job. I'm just going through the motions, right? And everyone is there at some point. Everyone feels that way. But that's why it's important to, like you said earlier, turn inward and look at what is it that I need that I'm not getting? Is it
yeah.
from my personal life? Is it from my professional life? What adjustments can I make? Where am I neglecting myself?
Mhm.
It's,
Right, a
you know,
question I ask a lot is like, is what you're doing now sustainable longevity?
yeah.
Right? Like and I think
Mm-hmm.
about like you have kids, right? Me and one of my clients talked about it because she was like, "I just don't know if I wanna do this." I'm like, "Well, is it working now?"
Mm-hmm.
She was like, "It is now. I think I can do this for the next 2 years." I'm like, "Okay. See,
Yeah.
like, but
Mm-hmm.
you're envisioning when my kids are X years old, I'm not willing to work when they have sporting events and miss all
Right.
their games." And she's like,
Yeah.
I just have that in my mind, and I'm like, sometimes there's a season too, which is hard in a career if you're, like, doing a career change, but, like, how that can be scary, but also how
Yeah.
can I still live the life at different phases? Because I think that's where people get stuck. They're like, "I used to love it at this age or this phase," and I'm like, "Yeah, but then your life changed and now it doesn't fit."
Yeah.
So now it's
Right.
like, "Well, this isn't fun. I wasn't expecting it to be like this at this age," and it's like, "Well, you're a whole 'nother person with a whole bunch of different stuff going on, so that's not
Yeah.
working anymore." So it's
Right.
okay to be like, Not working for me." But that whole reroute, I think is just so
Yeah.
scary. It's like we have to
Yeah.
kinda open the door and see your possibilities at least to give you some hope and, like, maybe there's some other options.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's scary because it's the one thing that doesn't change as you are changing over time,
Yeah.
right? You have the same exact job in the same exact place with the same exact requirements and schedule. when you're young, when you're a little older, when you're, approaching your retirement time, like those are completely different eras of your life. And, we outgrow things sometimes, but we
Yeah.
also can work with it if it becomes more palatable with changes.
Right.
So, I guess our point is like it's perfectly okay to set boundaries. It's okay to recognize when your boundaries are not enough
Yeah.
and what balance looks like. If you can
Yeah.
achieve that, can you continue or do we need a pivot? Right?
Um, Love that. So if you guys end up having questions,
Yeah.
concerns about this, because work and relationships are the two things we will always talk about because they're
Mhm.
the two things that consume people the most.
Yeah.
So, all right, squad. Well, thanks for joining. If you have anything, let us know. Until next time.
See you next time.